Good afternoon. Welcome to today's Accounting Principles Google Hangout on Air. Today we'll be taking a closer look at the trends and predictions that we're seeing surrounding our 2014 salary guide. We're going to take an in-depth look at in-demand accounting and finance positions and the salaries associated with those positions. We'll be using data from the Accounting Principles 2014 salary guide, as well as insight and experience from our guest panel. Today we're joined by Byron White, Michelle Clark, Stacy Jacobs, and Stephanie Rakuta. So I'd like to kick it off with introductions. Byron, if you could first explain what you do for Accounting Principles.
Thanks, Lindsay. I am the Managing Director for our South Florida branches for Accounting Principles and Parker and Lynch.
Thanks, Byron. And next I'll pass it over to Michelle Clark. Michelle, would you give a little introduction of yourself?
Hi, I'm Michelle Clark. I am a Division Director for the Inland Empire branch of the Parker and Lynch brand. We do direct hire and permanent search.
Thank you, Michelle. And next we have Stacy Jacobs. Stacy?
Hi, Stacy Jacobs. I'm the Managing Director for Agilon and Accounting Principles and Parker Lynch in the greater Cincinnati area.
Thank you, Stacy. And last but not least, we have Stephanie Rakuta. Stephanie?
Hi, Stephanie Rakuta. I'm the Managing Director for Accounting Principles, Agilon Professional Staffing, and Parker and Lynch for the Metro Detroit area. We do contract to hire, direct hire staffing.
Thank you, Stephanie. So we have all these great guests today. They're going to be able to provide their insight and their experience working with both employers and job seekers on certain accounting and finance positions. So I'd like to go into a little bit of background. Obviously, we launched our 2014 salary guide late last year, and we'll be using it throughout the year to really consult and guide employers and job seekers to where salaries are appropriate for them, their skill set, and their level of experience. So in researching our 2014 salary guide, we found that 56% of accounting and finance positions' average salaries are expected to remain flat in 2014. 44% of salaries are expected to increase year over year from 2013 to 2014, which is great that we're seeing that. So I'd like to ask the panel, what positions do you estimate will increase in salary year over year from last year to this? Byron, what are you seeing in your South Florida market?
So in South Florida, we have seen a extremely high demand for the senior accountant level candidate. With the shortage of quality accountants at that level, we expect a premium to be placed on that skill set. So with that being said, we feel like that's going to drive the salary increases for a retention for current customers and clients in that level.
We're seeing that similarly in the Detroit market. We actually saw quite a flee of the accountants in the Detroit market over the last few years as the job market here shrunk quite a bit. So we saw a lot of candidates leaving the Detroit market, and we're also seeing a high demand for the senior accountants in Detroit.
I know in Cincinnati and the northern Kentucky area, we're a heavy manufacturing area, so the demand for cost accountants with a manufacturing background is really increasing in demand, what we're seeing right now.
I would agree. We're seeing the senior accountant issue as well here. But what we are seeing now is we're seeing management salaries starting to come back because they had fallen 20 to 30% through the Great Recession. We saw some of the accounting operational salaries come back last year, and now we're starting to see some of the management salaries come back. So that's a good thing as well.
That is great. I'd like to touch briefly on, obviously Accounting Principles is able to really guide clients and employers as they're looking for those perfect candidates for their open positions. We found that most salary increases that we researched for our salary guide can be linked to certain kind of components that employers take into consideration. So we found that 31% of employers responded that a recommendation from an employer's manager really impacts that increase in salary that they see year over year. 27% of respondents said that the ability for a candidate to complete a job quickly really impacts that potential for them to have an increase in their salary. And then finally, 29% of employers indicated that it was the employee's unique talent or ability that really impacted that potential for a salary increase. So I'd like to ask all of you, as a business leader, how do you know when an employee is ready for a raise? Michelle, I'll pass it over to you to provide a little insight there.
Well, I think, you know, we all kind of touched on it a little bit in the last conversation. We're seeing a lot of staff and senior accountant positions opening up, and there's not a lot of talent there. So my advice to employers is, if you have an employee that is a key component to your company, you need to keep that employee in place. So you need to really consider giving them at least a 5%, if not a 10% raise, because we've come to a point where working candidates are now ready to move on to their next job, which means that you're going to start losing some people that kind of hung through you with the thick and thin of everything that's been going on. So, you know, I think it's right now it's about key employees, and if they're a key employee, you need to give them an increase.
I would agree with that, Michelle. I think the main thing that I've found in talking to some of our clients is taking a proactive stance when it comes to salary increases, not waiting until you fear that they may be looking for their next job or interviewing for another opportunity, but doing that prior to them even getting to that point.
I think in our market right now, the name of the game is retention. The employees that were retained through the recession are the employees that were key and the employees that our clients wanted to retain. And so the salary guide has been a great tool to see if they're competitive in the marketplace. And if they really want to hold on to these employees, it's time to really look at their salaries and make sure that they're being competitive, not only to attract new talent, but to retain the talent that they have.
Another interesting fact that we found through our research in developing the salary guide was that 50% of organizations are always willing to negotiate a new hire's salary. 40% are willing to negotiate for very hard to place positions, and only 10% are never willing to negotiate. So what are your suggestions for finding a happy medium between never negotiating sometimes for those hard positions, or always being willing to negotiate salaries? Let's kick it over to Stephanie. Stephanie, do you have any insight there?
Well, I think it's important for employers to really be realistic when they go into that market. And I think sometimes employers want to go in with their lowest offer initially, and I think that that's just not being realistic. I think that they should go in, you know, with their best offer first, and then they won't find themselves in that position where they have to negotiate.
I agree with that. I also tend to advise my clients and candidates to perhaps look at non-monetary options, such as greater vacation time, flex hours, or maybe even the ability to work from home 1 or 2 days a week.
I agree with Michelle. I think that it's important for employees to put a price tag on, you know, certain things like that are important to them, like the flex time, perhaps the working from home occasionally. Putting a price tag on that so they know kind of where to come in and where they would be willing to negotiate. But I was a little surprised that, you know, such a high percentage of companies, you know, do not negotiate. You know, 10% say never negotiate. That was surprising to me.
I would agree with that also. In the market that we find ourselves in now, especially in accounting and finance, with the unemployment rate dropping the way that it is, they're going to find the need to negotiate if they're not already.
That's great. Thanks, everyone. Another fact that I'd like to kind of discuss today is in developing the 2014 guide, we analyzed a few key positions, and we looked at the 2013 data, so that average compensation compared to the 2014 data that was released. And that year-over-year increase was seen in a few really key in-demand positions. So some of those positions that we're placing are your staff accountants, tax specialists, financial analysts, data entry clerks, bookkeepers. Is that in line with what you're seeing in your marketplace, or are there some other standout positions that you're seeing have really jumped in salary from 2013 to 2014? Stacy, what are you seeing in the Cincinnati market?
I'm definitely seeing these positions, increase in salary. We do not get as many data entry clerk and bookkeeper, type of openings, so not as much information there, but definitely the staff accountants and tax specialists, financial analysts are in, great demand, and we are seeing those salaries, creeping up as time goes on. I think anything with tax, anything with audit, those are two very hot, positions right now. Definitely seeing increases in salaries in those. And something that didn't make this list was, payroll processors, payroll supervisors. We're definitely seeing an increase in need in those areas, and in turn, higher salaries for those positions.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Stacy. I think the tax and audit backgrounds seem to be in extreme demand, especially anyone who has prior experience with either one of the Big Four or in public accounting. We've gotten quite a big demand from clients looking for those types of backgrounds.
I agree. We're seeing a lot of need for the audit and the public-private mix on the senior accountants as well.
And it seems like so many of these positions are potentially entry-level. So with so much entry-level talent in the marketplace, how do you kind of consult and guide business leaders when they're trying to find the right entry-level talent for their company, for their corporate culture, and that fit? Byron, what are you seeing down in South Florida?
Yeah, what we've seen is the entry-level candidate who has done an internship, who has some sort of professional employment in addition to their academic, outstanding academic performance, are the ones who are getting more more demand for their type of profile. One of the things that we've seen are companies who take advantage of their internship program, partnering with the universities and colleges in the area, seem to attract that entry-level talent a lot easier than companies who don't partner with those universities.
I agree, and one of the things that we kind of talk to our clients about is, you can train skills, but you can't train culture or personality or match. So really, if you're hiring somebody entry level, they've got the educational background. As long as the match is there, you can train the skills that you need.
That's a great point. I think that's really what kind of sets a candidate apart, Michelle. And then moving into, I think, how employers can really attract and retain those top talent candidates. We found a few tactics that employers are using that we found in our salary guide data. We uncovered that 66% of employers responded that they would put emphasis on competitive benefits, which was the most popular tactic that employers are using, followed by providing bonuses, which 57% of employers responded that they would promote. Competitive compensation, 55% of employers said was very important in attracting that candidate. And finally, 55% of employers said that providing employees with upward mobility or a clear path for internal opportunities was a tactic they used to really attract that top-tier talent. So from your perspective, what can business leaders do in order to determine which benefits make the most sense for their company? Stephanie, what are you seeing in your market?
What we're seeing in our market and what is most attractive right now to the up-and-comers in our market is that clear upward mobility path, and work-life balance right now is what we're finding is most important. So I think the hot commodity right now, at least from our direct hire team, they are seeing is the Big Four candidates. So candidates with just a couple of years of public accounting going into the corporate world is what's most attractive right now to most of our clients. And they are looking for a clear path of upward mobility. They're looking for a lot of work-life balance. And so those benefits are what these candidates are looking for, and they're not willing to settle for anything less. So really, the vacation time is a huge benefit. And the typical 2 weeks, I guess, that some of the clients offer and what has been traditional is really not enough. I mean, what we're seeing as far as being competitive is, 4 to 6 weeks vacation, and they want to know that they're going to be promotable and that they're going to have those opportunities within 6 months to a year. I don't know what you're seeing in your markets right now.
No, Stephanie, I agree with everything you just said. I mean, I'm seeing that too, and definitely seeing, that from the candidate side, their desire, for that upward mobility, the flex time, definitely, things that candidates are really searching for right now as they kind of make their move from maybe higher pressure positions, Big Four experience. They're definitely looking for that. And I would also recommend to companies to really just take a look at their existing workforce. I know surveys can sometimes be a little tricky, but being able to survey, their existing workforce to find out, what do the employees of their company find most valuable, to working there, and being able to, put that, verbalize that to candidates thinking about joining the organization, and being able to maybe make those particular things more attractive to the general population.
I agree, Stacy, completely that, a company needs to ask themselves, why would somebody want to work here? And so, that if you can answer that question through, polling your workforce, or maybe even looking at your competitors and see what they're offering that's over and above what you're offering, I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, I agree with everybody, what the panel said here. I think what's really important for companies to realize, and as recruiters, we talk to a lot of candidates in the market, and one of the main things that they mention to us in terms of why they are looking for another opportunity is because they don't feel they have a voice. They don't feel that even if they make suggestions, even if they're not implemented, they weren't seriously considered. So I think being able to really reach out to your current employees and listen to what they are suggesting from a benefit perspective is really, really important to retaining the top talent that you need.
It sounds like that Gen Y millennials is being really impacted in these entry-level positions, all the things, some of which are pretty surprising, but it seems like that's a really particular generation that's being impacted. Moving back to the data a bit, I just want to go through the panel, and if you could all share one of or a few of the most surprising statistics or trends that you saw year over year, or what you're really being impacted in your market, and finally, what's your kind of your final takeaway or advice to either employers or job seekers looking for accounting and finance positions this year? So Byron, you want to kick it off? Byron?
Sorry, I lost you there. Sorry.
Yeah, that's quite all right.
What we're seeing, mid-level managers, we in South Florida, we don't have a ton of very large corporate headquarters down here in South Florida. So from the mid-sized to small businesses, that we're seeing that mid-level manager is really a key skill set, and that we're really seeing grow and needing from additional candidate perspective.
Thanks, Byron. Michelle, what are you seeing out in California?
I think the most surprising statistic was that only 18% of companies are focusing on retention, and I think that really needs to be a much higher percentage. As I said before, we're coming into a time when employees who have been working steady jobs, have been afraid to move, are now willing to move. So, you know, you need to really work at retaining and keeping those key employees.
Stacy, what about you? What's the most surprising statistic you've seen year over year?
Yeah, you know, in looking at the survey, the most surprising thing to me was that, you know, 56% of companies surveyed anticipated no change in salary for their accounting and financial employees. That surprised me, and it's not really what we're seeing on a day-to-day basis. So it could be a reality check for them, because I don't know if, you know, if they're not willing to maybe look at that, you know, salary, they could be, you know, in a desperate situation when they have, you know, turnover. And I think for the most part, the takeaway, you know, from my perspective is it's a competitive market out there. I think if you're not hiring consistently, you know, so some of these smaller to mid-sized companies maybe aren't, you know, steadily hiring, they don't realize how competitive it is. But dealing with open positions and companies every day, that's one thing I would, you know, really consult with my clients on, is it's competitive. And even though money is a key factor and salary is a key factor, sometimes that's not always, you know, what's going to, you know, win that perfect candidate. So to really look at the overall picture of their company, their workforce, why do people want to work there, you know, they just definitely need to realize that, you know, they're competing against their neighbors for the top talent.
No, those are great tips for employers. Stacy, do you have some final thoughts on your most surprising takeaways from this year's salary guide?
I do, and Stacy sort of stole my thunder, but I would say just overall, I have to say what really surprises me in general is how much things have changed since we actually collected the data for the 2014 salary guide in general. And I can tell you just from the Detroit market, because we were in such a deep, dark recession a couple of years ago, is how quickly the market has changed here, even in the last 6 months. And even from a contract perspective here, in the last 90 days, how quickly the just the pay has increased for our contract employees, and how quickly the jobs have just come in and have changed. So I know that our market here is just changed so dramatically, and then the demand even for the direct hire has changed so dramatically. So we are really in an ever-changing market, and that's a very positive thing. And I think we have a lot of changes coming for 2015 also. So it's very exciting.
Thank you, Stephanie. Well, I want to thank everyone for watching our Google Plus Hangout on Air today, and a very special thank you to all of our panel who shared their expert insight and experiences of what they're seeing day in and day out with employers and job seekers. Don't forget to go to accountingprinciples.com and request your free copy of the 2014 Accounting Principles Salary Guide. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus for more insights and roundtables in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.